Well, tonight with us, I have our good friend and member of our church, Kim Lindholm. Kim, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Could you just tell me a little bit about yourself, what it is that you do, your family? Would love to know about your family and how long you've been at New Vintage Church.
Sure. Yeah, I am a mother to two biological children and one son-in-law. So I've Madeline, who is married to Nolan,
Mm-hmm.
and married and living in California, and she's 21. And Nicholas, who is supposed to be graduating, he is graduating this year, unofficially, officially, whatever,
Yeah,
and 18. And then I've been married for 28 years.
it's amazing.
And I just grew up in this area since I was like 2, so it's been a really long time. And as far as New Vintage, I'm trying to think of how long have I been at New Vintage? Probably around 7 years,
I was gonna
6
say
years,
6 or
maybe.
7 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. How did you guys find New Vintage?
Oh, my kids were at a youth conference,
Okay.
and Austin was like a guest speaker for 20 or 30 minutes. And they came home from that. It was not a youth it was a summer camp, actually.
Oh, okay.
And that's like all they talked about is Austin's message. And they they were like, just so excited about what he had to say. And then we found out that he was a pastor in the Tri-Cities.
Yeah,
So my kids were like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. We want to be a part of that church. And so we came to visit. And of course,
just stayed. That's awesome. And what do you do for a living?
I am a mental health counselor.
Okay.
So currently I work at Hanford with all the Hanford employees. They have counseling sessions available to them. And I do educational programming for mental health related issues out there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being here with us. I just want to ask just sort of an icebreaker question, and then we'll jump into the sort of deeper stuff. What is one fun fact? Maybe it's a fun fact. Maybe it's just a really awesome fact that not a lot of people would know about you, Kim, but maybe more people should know about you. Kind of your the hidden gem about Kim.
Ooh, okay. Well, I would say one of the things about me is I love dogs. I'm kind of obsessed with dogs, and I have had to be kind of reined in on buying puppies constantly. So currently we have 3 dogs, but that's me holding back. So that is a fun fact. The other thing about me that I've kind of come to realize as an adult, this isn't necessarily a good thing or a fun thing, but it relates to the topic, is that I am a rule follower. So I am really comfortable not following the rules, which has really played into this whole thing with the virus. But.
Yeah, I am by nature, or maybe by constant choices, not a rule follower.
Yeah.
So it's just how I've adapted through life. What's the most, you said that you have 3 dogs right now, and that's like you reining it in. What's the most dogs that you've had? And like, what would be your limit?
3 is my max, and that's that's actually not me reining it in. That's my husband saying no more. So yeah, it's not that I want to have a lot of dogs at once. It's just that I really like puppies, and so we often have other dogs visiting our house. It's not uncommon for us to have 5 dogs at our house at a given time. So yeah,
we have one very small dog, and I feel like he takes up too much space. So
yeah.
it's Well, you had mentioned just a brief second ago that as a rule follower, it's played in a little bit to this whole season and pandemic and stuff like that. And so I just want to dive into that a little bit from your perspective as a counselor, as a mental health specialist. Overall, do you think that how do you feel like we've handled this pandemic? And I'm not talking about like our government or what. I just mean like as individuals, how have you seen us handle it? Has it been in a healthy way, an unhealthy way? And then I'll probably have some follow-up questions to that.
Yeah, for sure. It's been interesting. I think I've thought lately how much it'd be, I'm sure there's studies going on about how people are responding to it, and there'll be lots of information later on. and I think it's fluctuated. It's been interesting actually to watch people's responses in different
Mhm.
states throughout this whole process. I would say generally, I would hate to say it, but I think, we're looking at a lot of research that's showing that mental health conditions are at all-time high right now. Um,
Mhm.
more substance abuse, more domestic violence, depression, anxiety, all of those kinds of things. Suicide is on the rise, and the national hotlines for people in crisis are like 1,000 times
Yeah.
more active than they typically are. So, you know, it, I'd say, it's not a broad statement. Some people are doing great considering the circumstances. I think there's no perfect solution, so it's hard to measure that, right? Like it's
Yeah.
hard to measure, how are people coping, and even like for myself, because I am pretty in tune to myself and
Mhm.
my emotions and moods and things like that. Even though I feel like I'm doing a lot of the right things, it doesn't mean that I don't experience hard
Right.
times. It's
Right.
not. It's not perfect. I don't feel great all the time.
Right. One of the things that I've heard people say that honestly it I don't want to say frustrates me, that's probably too strong a word, but kind of like just rubs me the wrong way is when they say, well, nothing's changed for me. This is
Oh,
just like nothing's changed for me. Life is as normal. Um, and I don't know how to respond to those people. I just go, oh, okay. How would you respond to somebody like that that says, well, nothing's changed for me. I'm still going to work. I'm still working like normal.
oh yeah.
But to me, those people, when they respond that way, they seem a little more like wound up and like anxious.
Right.
It's like, well,
Right.
everything's changed for everybody.
Sure.
So how would you respond to somebody like that?
Well, I would say that's just a coping mechanism.
Mm,
I think denial is a strong coping mechanism. I don't think it's healthy, but
right.
I would say a lot of people are choosing that way of coping. I mean, I think there's no way that things haven't changed for people. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I've just gotten to the point of thinking about, just being compassionate with people, grace, and recognizing we're all going through a tough time and we all deal with it differently. And if they're really feeling that way, then that's their choice, I guess. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I guess there's parts of me that becomes opinionated about things like that, but I'm not gonna. I mean, I think it's probably not helpful to debate those things with people.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, maybe you're in a different position than me. Now, if somebody was in my office and they were talking like that, I probably would handle it a lot differently than if I had a lot of interesting conversations recently with people that I'm just like, wow,
Yeah.
people that I know really, really well. And the way they're thinking about all this is just shocking.
Yeah. Well, you said something just a second ago, like having compassion and grace for people. And and then you're talking about just having like random conversations with people, whether it's, just in your neighborhood or whatever. How would you advise, just whether it's from a professional standpoint or just a human standpoint, I'm walking to my mailbox to get the mail. My neighbor comes out and he's got opinions. How would you advise me, just as a like to be able to be gracious and compassionate and not just like lose it on him and like you're crazy.
Yeah, that's
How
a
do you
really
advise
great.
people like that?
Yeah. Ooh. I guess I guess I would have to evaluate what would the benefit be in me debating those things with somebody.
Hmm. That's
You
really
know, I mean, it's reflecting, I guess for me, just to reflect, this is really tough.
Mhm.
This is a hard, I mean, there's a lot of people that have different kind of radical views and are having a hard time. Like, I think social media is just toxic a little bit in certain places right
Yeah.
now. And people are just choosing the freedom to just say horrible things. And I guess we have the choice whether we want to respond to it or not. I don't think it's probably helpful. Is that an adequate answer? Do you
Yeah.
want to?
No, it's great.
Okay.
It's great. That's awesome. So what are some, as we're, still talking about the pandemic and different things, what are some healthy practices that we could adopt today, like we could start doing today, that could change everything for us? And I know that might seem too simplistic, like, oh, if I did this, then everything. But like, what are a couple, if Pastor Matt talks about keystone habits, like the one thing that changes everything. If there was just a couple of things that you could advise, pretend we're all sitting in your office with you and you
Yeah.
and all of us, and we started doing these few things that could change everything for us, what would those couple of things be?
Yeah, this is kind of my prescription. This is the COVID-19 prescription that I've
Yeah.
been giving everyone. And it's nothing profound. One is limit the amount of time that you spend watching the news. You
Mm,
know, and I'm speaking to myself. I've had to discipline myself about this too. Is that we don't have to watch the news all day to be informed. I think it's great to be informed. We need to stay informed, but maybe an update once or twice a day is plenty.
yeah.
And just limiting time spent kind of thinking about it, talking about it. I think these days, all of our conversations seem to be wrapped around COVID, and everything we do has COVID conversation. It's kind of penetrated all parts of our life. And
Yeah.
so I'd say have boundaries around your life. Don't let COVID just seep into every area of your life. That's one thing.
Wow. That's really good.
Huge. I think, really looking at some of the positives right now. So practicing gratitude maybe would be the thing you'd say,
Yeah.
is to look at the positives. There's plenty of positives happening amongst the situation. I mean, I know there's a lot of negatives, so I don't want to not validate that for people, because I recognize that it's really tough.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of really positives, and to try to focus on that and just kind of appreciate the extra time.
Yeah.
Doing things that we don't normally have time to do, I guess.
Yeah. Practicing gratitude is huge.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And especially I think, if you're having a time that you're feeling a little overwhelmed by it,
Mm-hmm.
to really be intentional to take time to think about, what are all the things I'm thankful for? What are all the things that are good? What are all the things that are going well?
Yeah.
It
And
actually changes to your neurotransmitters. It changes your neurochemistry in your brain. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
In that, generally for me, what I found is, whether it's in stressful situations or whatever's going on, an attitude of thanksgiving or spirit of gratitude, it usually changes perspective for me. And I
You bet.
realize, okay, whether it's not as bad as I thought it was, or I'm doing better than I thought I was, or ultimately, like, God is still in control. And
Yes.
so I may not understand. One of the things that I've like thought of is like these people with these conspiracy theories of all
Yeah.
the crazy things. I'm like, what if they're all right? Then what?
Oh,
What if they're
yeah.
all wrong? Then what?
Yeah.
Like, what does that
Right.
change for you? And so in my mind, I'm like, I don't care. God's in control. And
Yes.
so you people think you're crazy stuff, but
Yeah.
that kind of helps me
Totally.
stay grounded a little bit. Um,
Right.
so looking back, if we could take a time machine and go back 9, 10 weeks into the past, and we're just starting all of this, and you could, like you just did, write a prescription for COVID or whatever, but you could, sit with us and give us a few tips on um, how to handle the stresses that are going to be coming. So maybe something to combat and to help us not get to the place where suicide hotlines are at an all-time high, substance abuse, domestic violence, all those numbers are rising. What are a couple of things, a couple of ways, maybe it's practical tips that you can give us to manage our stress, manage those sorts of things early on, so we can learn for the next time? I'm not saying that there's going to be COVID, but there's definitely going to be stressful situations in our life moving forward. So
Right. Yeah. And I think it's stuff that people can actually do now too.
yeah.
I mean, it would have been nice to start, but I think just in general for stress management, I exercise is number one.
That's really good.
It's super helpful, like 30 minutes a day of like aerobic exercise, but walks are okay too. That really helps decrease it. It raises your serotonin levels, which is a neurotransmitter that helps you have a sense of well-being. It calms you. So if people are feeling really anxious, that is a great way to deal with anxiety. making sure you're getting enough sleep. I think I've talked to a lot of people that have really disrupted sleep right now. It's
Yeah.
pretty, pretty horrible. And that's going to compound, of course, other mental health issues. Um, that's a whole nother thing to talk about, sleep. But anyway,
Exercise, sleep.
exercise, yes. I would say, monitoring your thinking. I think we have to pay attention to how we think. I practice cognitive behavioral thinking or therapy with my patients, and the idea of that is basically like the problem isn't so much the problem as it is how we think about the problem, right? So being able to think about things in a healthier way is helpful.
That's really good. So yeah, what we talk about, like even in my small group that we have right now, we'll talk about like the biblical idea would be taking every thought captive. And that's a little bit like, how do we do that? And so we try to like wrap it with some like idea that we have, but this cognitive behavioral
therapy.
That sounds good.
Yes.
So could you just give me like a real life example? Like how would I, like just personally, how would I practice that in life and like right now, and take control of my thoughts? Because there's books, Joyce Meyer, The Battlefield of the Mind, those sorts of, I think it's Joyce Meyer's, but you have the battle is up here so much more than it is, or as much as it is out here. And so how can we really take control of our thoughts in our thinking?
Yeah, I actually give an assignment to people, and this is something that people can go ahead and practice if they'd like to. One of the things that I think is really helpful is to be intentional, to sit down and think about what are the repetitive thoughts that I have, the negative thoughts that are destructive, or they aren't of God, they aren't what He says, and write them all down. So write all the thoughts down, and then I kind of do columns. Like the next column would be, is true or is this not true? And a lot of times it's not true. And then the third column would be, what is the truth about this thing?
That's really good. I'm taking notes on this right now. That's so good.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you have your thoughts that you are constantly thinking. And then you said it's truth, and then what is true? Like
truth or not truth? Is it true or is it not true?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If it is true, what is the truth about it? So like I'll give you an example right now. This is a little extreme, but it's actually pretty accurate for how a lot of people are feeling.
Okay.
The world right now is not a safe place to be out in. That's an extreme response. Is that true or is that not true? There's some truth that there are safety risks out in the world,
Right.
But no, it's not true. The world is not an unsafe place. What is the truth? That there is a COVID virus that, and then I would even go through step by step what that means. That yes, we have to exercise precautions, things like that,
Yeah. Well, it's really good. I'm starting to like connect some of the things that you're saying to things that I've heard in the past. It's kind of cool. Like I used to be really, really fearful of sicknesses and stuff, like catching things, which is funny because now I'm like, with this whole thing going on, I haven't really been fearful of catching it or that sort of thing. But one of the people that I was talking to, and I was actually getting prayer from, she had said, and she was a counselor too, she said, Chris, what's the difference between you knowing that person has had the stomach flu or whatever, and then being at church with you, versus you not knowing? The only difference is knowledge, and like they're still around you, they're still there. So you allow that knowledge of that sickness or that virus or that uncertainty or whatever it is to rule your thoughts and your thinking. But if you just do what you're supposed to do, stay healthy and all these things, then you'll either be okay or you'll catch it. But
it won't change the outcome.
It really put me at ease, just thinking like, okay, I can only control what I can control, and then I just have to ultimately trust God with the outcome. So that's good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start
Yeah.
to put that to practice. That's really good, and we're gonna make a little meme of that or something. That's awesome. Cognitive thinking therapy. Is that right?
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Behavioral therapy,
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy. That's awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, and I'm going to actually post in here just for some questions, and so we may be sending some questions your way, Kim. But do you have any final thoughts for us as we are closing up this brief conversation? I know we could talk about this stuff for hours,
Sure.
but we've only got a few minutes. So,
Yeah.
do you have any final thoughts for us as we part today?
Yeah, one is just in response to what you were just saying. I think that's a huge piece of it is we have to evaluate what do we have control over and what we don't. We actually have control over a lot of things in this situation. There are a lot of things we don't have control over, but it's important to focus on those things. The serenity prayer to me is I live by the serenity prayer. It's important. So God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think if you take each issue in life and apply that prayer, it is so helpful.
Yeah.
The other thing is just be kind to one another, offer grace to one another. When you're out in public, be kind, be patient, stay connected. Just because we're, having to socially distance a little bit doesn't mean we can't find ways to connect with people. I think that's super important. Nothing else we've learned throughout this whole thing is we really, truly do need other people. We all need other people. So.
Yeah. It doesn't matter how much of an introvert you are or not a people person you are. People are realizing we need people in our life.
Yes, sure.
Well, thank you so much, Kim, for your wisdom and sharing with us tonight, answering just these few questions. And I'm sure we'll get more questions coming in. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.